Ethan Caldwell adjusted the collar of his overcoat as the crisp autumn wind swept through Green Hill Cemetery. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the neatly arranged headstones, bathing the grounds in a golden glow. Despite the beauty of the scene, Ethan felt only the familiar weight pressing down on him, the weight of grief, of loss, of a past that refused to stay buried. For 11 years, every Sunday without fail, he had made this journey alone. His driver, Robert, always knew to stop at the wrought iron gates, allowing Ethan to walk the final stretch in solitude. The crunch of gravel under his polished shoes was the only sound accompanying him as he approached the grave of his only son, Nathan Caldwell. The name was etched into the cool marble, the inscription as familiar as his own reflection. Beloved son and friend, may he soar forever. Ethan placed a bouquet of white roses on the grave, the same as he had every week for more than a decade. His fingers brushed against the cold stone, and he let out a slow breath. "Hey, son," he murmured, his voice rough from years of unshed tears. "Brought your favorites again." He knelt there for a while, speaking in hushed tones, sharing stories Nathan would never hear, updates on a life that had grown emptier in his absence. And then, just as he prepared to leave, something caught his attention, a movement in the distance. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the light. But no. A figure stood several yards away, half hidden by the towering oak tree near the edge of the cemetery. A child. She couldn't have been more than 12, small and thin, wrapped in an oversized hoodie that had seen better days. Her skin was a deep brown, contrasting sharply with her piercing blue eyes, eyes that locked onto Ethan's with an unsettling intensity. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't lost. She was simply watching him. Ethan straightened, his brows knitting together. "Hello," he called, his voice firm but not unkind. The girl didn't move. He took a step forward, his leather soles crunching against the fallen leaves. "Are you all right? Are you lost?" For a moment, it seemed like she might answer. Her lips parted slightly, her head tilting as if considering his words. But before he could take another step, she turned and darted away, disappearing into the thick grove bordering the cemetery. Ethan exhaled sharply, staring after her. Strange. Probably a local kid, he reasoned. Someone with nowhere else to go. And yet, something about her felt deliberate. As he turned back to Nathan's grave, his breath caught in his throat. There, resting atop the bouquet of white roses, was a single white lily. His heart pounded. He hadn't placed it there. And only one person had ever brought lilies to Nathan's grave, Nathan's mother, Evelyn. But Evelyn had been gone for 5 years. Ethan scanned the cemetery again, but the girl had vanished. A chill ran down his spine, colder than the October air. Coincidence? Or had the past just sent him a message? The encounter at the cemetery lingered in Ethan Caldwell's mind like a melody he couldn't place. The girl, with her striking blue eyes, had appeared and vanished like a ghost. And the lily, so personal, so specific, had unsettled him more than he cared to admit. That night, as he sat in his dimly lit study, a glass of bourbon in hand, he found himself staring at the flower resting on his desk. The memory of it sitting atop Nathan's grave gnawed at him. Who was she? Why had she been there? And most importantly, how did she know about the lilies? The questions refused to let him sleep. By the following Sunday, his curiosity had turned into determination. As his driver pulled up to the cemetery gates, Ethan stepped out, scanning the area with more purpose than usual. He followed the familiar path to Nathan's grave, half expecting to see the girl again. He wasn't disappointed. She was there. This time, she wasn't watching from a distance. She knelt at Nathan's headstone, her hands clasped, her lips moving in silent prayer. The sight of her so close to his son's grave sent a jolt through Ethan's chest. He cleared his throat, approaching cautiously. "You're back." The girl flinched, her head snapping up. For the first time, he saw something in her expression, hesitation, maybe even fear. She rose to her feet quickly, her small frame tense like she was ready to bolt. "Wait," Ethan said, raising a hand as if to calm a skittish deer. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to talk." She hesitated, her blue eyes scanning his face, searching for something, trust, perhaps. "I don't want your money," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. Ethan blinked. Money? What did she think this was? "I'm not offering money," he said carefully. "I just want to know why you're here." "Why Nathan's grave?" The girl swallowed hard. She looked down, her fingers twisting the frayed hem of her hoodie. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I needed to know if you were real." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Real?" She took a deep breath, steeling herself. Then, with a hesitation that made his heart pound, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished locket. She held it out toward him, her fingers trembling. Ethan took it cautiously, flipping it open with a quiet click. His breath caught in his throat. Inside was a tiny, faded photograph. His son, Nathan, smiling. And beside him, a woman, young, beautiful, with soft features that stirred a distant memory in Ethan's mind. A wave of realization crashed over him. Who is she?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The girl's eyes locked onto his. "My mother," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Her name was Elena Thompson. And Nathan Caldwell was my father." The world around Ethan seemed to tilt. His fingers tightened around the locket as her words settled into his bones. This girl, this stranger standing before him, was his granddaughter. Ethan Caldwell sat in his study, staring at the small locket resting on his desk. The revelation from earlier that day still rattled him. Mia Thompson was his granddaughter, Nathan's daughter. The thought was almost too much to process. Nathan had a child, and he never knew? And Elena, what had happened to her? Ethan's fingers traced the edge of the locket as he reached for the old rotary phone on his desk. There was only one man he trusted to help him make sense of this, Ryan Carter, a seasoned private investigator who had worked with him for years. If there was a truth to uncover, Ryan would find it. "Ethan," Ryan answered after the second ring. "Didn't expect to hear from you this late." "I need your help," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "It's about my son. And a woman named Elena Thompson." There was a pause. "I'll be at your place in an hour." When Ryan arrived, he wasted no time. Ethan handed him the locket and explained everything: the girl at the cemetery, the photograph inside, and the shocking claim that she was Nathan's daughter. Ryan studied the picture carefully before nodding. "Elena Thompson," he muttered. "I'll start digging. If she really was involved with Nathan, there should be some trace of her." Ethan exhaled. "That's what worries me, Ryan. There's nothing. It's like she vanished into thin air." Ryan looked up, his expression serious. "Then we start with the last place she was seen." The next morning, Ethan and Ryan drove to the old neighborhood where Elena had once lived. The small apartment complex had seen better days: paint peeling off the walls, rusted railings on the balconies, and faded for rent signs hanging in the windows. They found the landlord, an older man named Frank Marlowe, who leaned on the counter of his office as he scratched his balding head. Elena Thompson, he repeated. Yeah, I remember her. Lived here about 13 years ago. Nice girl. Kept to herself. What happened to her? Ethan asked. Frank sighed. She disappeared. One day, she just didn't come back. Left everything behind, clothes, furniture, even groceries on the counter. Cops looked into it, but nothing ever came of it. Ryan exchanged a glance with Ethan. Did she ever mention being in trouble? Anyone suspicious hanging around? Frank frowned. Now that you mention it, yeah. There was a guy. Always wore a suit, real slick type. Used to show up late at night. She looked nervous around him. Ethan's chest tightened. Did you get his name? Frank shook his head. No, but I remember the car he drove. Black Lincoln. Had those fancy tinted windows. Ethan's stomach dropped. He knew that car. Caldwell Industries used them for their high-level executives. This wasn't just a missing person case. Someone from his own company had been watching Elena. And if she had disappeared, it wasn't by accident. Ethan Caldwell sat in the back of his car, the city lights of Chicago flickering past in a blur. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the leather seat, his mind racing. The discovery that someone from Caldwell Industries had been watching Elena before she disappeared wasn't just unsettling, it was terrifying. If someone within his own company had been involved, it meant this conspiracy ran deeper than he had imagined. Beside him, Ryan Carter reviewed his notes. The Black Lincoln. That's our lead, he said, glancing up. I ran a check on Caldwell Industries' fleet records from 13 years ago. Only a handful of executives had clearance for a vehicle with tinted windows. Ethan turned to him, his jaw clenched. Who? Ryan slid a file across the seat. Victor Hale. The name sent a chill through Ethan. He remembered Hale well, once a corporate enforcer, handling delicate situations that required discretion. He was a man who operated in the shadows, doing what needed to be done to protect the company's interests. Ethan had fired him years ago after rumors surfaced about unethical tactics, but he had never imagined Hale's involvement in something this sinister. Ryan continued, Hale left the company abruptly around the same time Elena vanished. No resignation letter, no farewell. Just gone. I don't think that's a coincidence. Ethan exhaled sharply. So where is he now? Ryan smirked. That's the tricky part. He's off the grid, but I put out some feelers. A guy like Hale doesn't just disappear, he relocates. Word is, he's been spotted in Denver, Colorado, working under a fake name. If he's involved in Elena's disappearance, he might know exactly what happened to her. Ethan's gut twisted. He had spent years mourning his son, believing Nathan's death was a tragic accident. Now, the same company he built was tangled in a cover-up that had destroyed his son's life, and possibly that of his granddaughter's mother. He straightened, his voice firm. We're going to Denver. 2 days later, Ethan and Ryan found themselves in a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place where questions weren't welcome, and people paid in cash to avoid leaving a trail. Ryan leaned in, whispering, Hale comes here every Thursday. Keeps to himself, but people know better than to cross him. Ethan nodded, glancing toward the back of the room. There he was. Victor Hale sat in a corner booth, nursing a glass of whiskey. He looked older, rougher, but the cold, calculating glint in his eyes remained. Ethan stood, adjusting his coat. Let's go have a chat. As they approached, Hale glanced up, his expression barely changing. But Ethan saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. Well, Hale murmured, setting his drink down. "Didn't expect to see you here, Caldwell." Ethan sat across from him, his gaze unflinching. "You and I are going to have a conversation, Hale." "About Elena Thompson." Hale smirked, but Ethan could see it, the hint of unease. "Good." Because this time, Ethan wasn't leaving without answers. Victor Hale leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping against the side of his whiskey glass. His smirk was casual, but Ethan Caldwell could see the tension just beneath the surface. Hale was a man used to control, used to operating in the shadows. And right now, he knew he had lost it. Ethan didn't waste time. "Elena Thompson. Where is she?" Hale chuckled, shaking his head. "Straight to the point. I always liked that about you, Caldwell." He swirled his drink lazily before setting it down. "But you're asking the wrong question." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then give me the right one." Hale exhaled, his eyes narrowing. "Not where is she? Try asking yourself why she disappeared." Ethan's patience was thinning. He had spent years believing his son's death was a tragic accident. Now, piece by piece, the truth was unraveling. Nathan had been killed to cover up something bigger. And Elena, the mother of Ethan's granddaughter, had been erased. Ryan Carter, sitting beside him, leaned in. "You were seen at her apartment just before she vanished. Black Lincoln, company issue. You and I both know that wasn't a social visit." For the first time, Hale's smirk faltered. It was brief, but it was enough. Ethan pressed forward. "Who gave the order, Hale?" Silence stretched between them. The din of the bar faded into the background. Then, finally, Hale leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You're getting close to something you don't want to dig up, Caldwell," he muttered. "This doesn't end well for men like you." Ethan didn't flinch. "You let me worry about that." Hale studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Elena was in the wrong place at the wrong time," he said. "She had information. Your son told her things he shouldn't have. She was going to expose them." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. "Expose what?" Hale glanced around the room, as if checking for unseen eyes. Then he muttered one word. "Project Solace." Ethan exchanged a look with Ryan. That was the name of the file that had been erased from Caldwell Industries records. The missing piece of a puzzle that had already cost 2 lives. Before Ethan could press further, the bar door swung open. 2 men stepped inside, dressed in dark suits, their eyes scanning the room with sharp efficiency. Hale's expression hardened. "That's my cue." He stood, but before he could take a step, Ryan grabbed his wrist. "Not so fast." Hale yanked free, his voice low and urgent. "You don't get it. If they know I talked to you, we're all dead men." Ethan turned toward the door. One of the suited men locked eyes with him, pulling out a phone and speaking into it. Ryan cursed under his breath. "We've been made." Hale shoved past them. "You want the truth, Caldwell? Start with your board of directors. They're the ones who wanted this buried." Then he was gone, slipping through the back exit just as the 2 men began moving toward Ethan's table. Ryan grabbed his arm. "We need to go. Now." As they stepped out into the cold Denver night, Ethan realized one thing. This wasn't just about Nathan anymore. This was war. The drive back from Denver was silent, the weight of Victor Hale's words pressing down on Ethan Caldwell like a lead blanket. Project Solace. The name had been erased from Caldwell Industries records, but it was the key to everything: Nathan's death, Elena's disappearance, and the powerful forces working to keep the truth buried. And now, Ethan knew exactly where to look. Back home in Chicago, Ryan Carter wasted no time digging deeper. His network of contacts traced corporate financial transactions, offshore accounts, and deleted internal communications. By the next morning, he had a name: Marcus Steele. Ethan clenched his fists as he stared at the report on his desk. Marcus had been a trusted advisor for decades, rising through the ranks to become Caldwell Industries' chief operating officer. He had always been composed, always loyal. Or so Ethan had thought. Ryan exhaled. "It's not just Steele," he said. "Jennifer Lane is involved too." Jennifer Lane, Caldwell Industries' chief financial officer. Ethan had trusted her with his company's most sensitive financial matters. If she and Steele were working together, it meant that the highest levels of his company had turned against him. Steele and Lane authorized offshore payments linked to shell companies, Ryan continued. One of those companies made a six-figure deposit into an account tied to Heir right before Elena disappeared. Ethan's stomach churned. They paid to have her silenced. Ryan nodded. And that's just the start. These transactions go back 13 years. Nathan was looking into something bigger than just corporate fraud. He must have gotten too close, and they shut him down. Ethan swallowed back the anger rising in his throat. Then we make them answer for it. That afternoon, Ethan called an emergency board meeting. The atmosphere in the sleek glass-walled conference room was tense as the executives filed in, exchanging cautious glances. Marcus Steele and Jennifer Lane sat near the center, their expressions unreadable. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his knuckles pressed into the polished oak surface. He let the silence stretch just long enough to make them uneasy before he spoke. "I know what you did." A few board members shifted in their seats, confused. Steele remained still. Lane's fingers tightened slightly around the pen she held. Ethan continued, his voice sharp. "Project Solace. Nathan knew about it. Elena Thompson knew about it. And now, so do I." Jennifer Lane scoffed, her tone forced and dismissive. "Ethan, if this is about some old company project." "Don't," Ethan cut her off. His voice was cold. "Nathan didn't die in an accident. And Elena didn't just disappear. Someone in this room made sure of that." A hush fell over the table. Steele finally spoke, his tone calm but calculating. "You're making serious accusations, Ethan." "I have proof," Ethan said. He slid a folder across the table. Ryan had compiled everything: bank transfers, erased records, Heir's direct payment. "And I have witnesses." Steele's jaw tightened. "You don't understand what you're getting into." Ethan leaned in, his eyes burning. "No, Marcus. You don't understand. You betrayed me. You betrayed my son. And now, you're going to pay for it." The room was silent. For the first time in years, Ethan had the upper hand. And he wasn't letting go. The tension in the Caldwell Industries boardroom was suffocating. Ethan Caldwell stood firm at the head of the long mahogany table, his piercing gaze locked onto Marcus Steele and Jennifer Lane. Around them, the other board members sat in stunned silence, shifting uncomfortably as the weight of his accusations settled over the room. Steele leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Ethan," he said smoothly, "you're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. These conspiracy theories." Ethan slammed his hand against the table, the sharp crack echoing through the room. "Don't patronize me, Marcus. I know exactly what you did." Ryan Carter, standing near the door, crossed his arms. "The money trail leads straight to you. Offshore accounts, erased records, and a payment to Victor Hale right before Elena Thompson disappeared. He tossed a thick file onto the table. Care to explain? Jennifer Lane's face remained composed, but Ethan noticed the way her fingers trembled as she flipped through the documents. This proves nothing, she said. Just old transactions. Old transactions? Ethan cut in, his voice laced with fury. These old transactions financed my son's murder. They ensured that Elena Thompson was silenced. And now that I'm digging, I have no doubt you'd do the same to Mia if it meant protecting your secrets. A murmur spread through the boardroom. Some members, previously indifferent, now wore looks of concern. Steele exhaled, folding his hands on the table. Ethan, I strongly suggest you tread carefully. You don't know the full story. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Then enlighten me. Steele hesitated for just a second too long. Ryan smirked. That's what I thought. He turned to Ethan. They won't confess. Not here. Ethan nodded, then addressed the entire boardroom. Listen to me carefully. The authorities already have these files. If you're innocent, I suggest you cooperate, because when this goes public, anyone complicit will fall with them. The room erupted in murmurs of alarm. Some board members looked to Steele, others to Jennifer Lane, waiting for guidance. Lane's mask of control finally cracked. You're making a mistake, Ethan, she said, her voice low but sharp. No, Ethan said, his voice unwavering. The mistake was trusting you. Just then, the doors to the boardroom swung open. 2 federal agents stepped inside, their badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. Marcus Steele? Jennifer Lane, one of them said. You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Jennifer paled. Steele's jaw clenched, but he said nothing as the agents approached. Ethan crossed his arms, his voice firm. This company was built on integrity. I won't let people like you destroy that. It ends today. As the agents led them away, Ethan finally exhaled. Justice had taken years. But today, it had arrived. The sun hung low over the Caldwell estate, casting long golden rays across the sprawling garden. Ethan Caldwell stood on the back patio, hands resting on the railing as he stared out over the horizon. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, a storm still raged inside him. The battle for justice was over, at least the first part of it. Marcus Steele and Jennifer Lane had been arrested. Project Solace, once buried under layers of deception, had been exposed. The board of Caldwell Industries had been shaken to its core, but the company would survive. Nathan's name had finally been cleared. Yet, despite everything, Ethan felt the weight of regret pressing down on him. The truth had come at a cost. Nathan had died without knowing his own child. Elena Thompson had vanished, her fate still unknown. And Mia, the granddaughter he never knew he had, was now standing at a crossroads with him. He turned when he heard the soft shuffle of footsteps. Mia stood near the doorway, her small frame wrapped in one of his old sweaters, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She still carried herself like she was ready to run, like trust was something she could never afford to give too easily. Long day, she murmured, stepping closer. Ethan nodded. A long few months. He studied her for a moment. How are you holding up? Mia exhaled, her breath visible in the cool air. I don't know, she admitted. I should feel relieved, I guess. But it doesn't bring my mom back. Ethan's chest tightened. He had spent years mourning Nathan, feeling the hollow ache of loss. Now Mia was walking that same painful road, only for her, there was still an open wound. Elena's disappearance remained a mystery. "We're not done yet," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We found justice for Nathan. Now we find the truth about your mother." Mia looked up at him, her blue eyes, the same shade as Nathan's, filled with uncertainty. "And if we don't?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Then we keep looking." She studied him for a long moment. He could see the wariness, the hesitation, the years of learning to rely only on herself. But slowly, ever so slightly, she nodded. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out the locket she had given him the first night they met. He placed it gently in her palm, curling her fingers around it. "You're not alone in this, Mia. You never were. And you never will be again." For the first time, she didn't pull away. Instead, she tightened her grip on the locket and whispered, "Okay." The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with unanswered questions and painful memories. But for the first time in years, Ethan Caldwell knew one thing for sure. He had lost a son. But now, he had found a granddaughter. And this time, he wouldn't fail her. Life has a way of unraveling secrets when we least expect it. For Ethan Caldwell, the truth about his son's death and the existence of his granddaughter shattered everything he thought he knew. But through pain, loss, and betrayal, he found something even greater, a second chance. For many, the story of Ethan and Mia serves as a powerful reminder that the past does not define the future. Mistakes, regrets, and missed opportunities are inevitable in life, but what truly matters is how we choose to move forward. Ethan spent over a decade mourning Nathan, believing that his story had ended. He had resigned himself to a life of solitude, carrying the weight of grief in silence. But life, unpredictable as it is, presented him with an opportunity, not to erase the past, but to make things right in the present. This lesson is especially profound for those who have lived through decades of change, loss, and redemption. As we age, we tend to reflect on the what-ifs, relationships we could have nurtured, words we wish we had said, time we wish we had spent differently. But just as Ethan learned, it is never too late to reconnect, to seek the truth, or to fight for justice. Whether it's making amends with a long-lost family member, standing up for what is right, or simply taking the time to cherish those we love, every moment we have is a chance to do better. Another powerful theme from Ethan's journey is the importance of family, not just by blood, but by choice. When he discovered Mia, she was just a stranger, a girl who had been abandoned by the world, searching for answers. But by choosing to stand by her, to fight for her, he redefined what family truly meant. Family is not just about the people we are born to, it's about the people we show up for, time and time again. And then, there is the power of truth. In a world where deception can destroy lives, uncovering the truth can be dangerous, even painful. But as Ethan proved, justice is always worth pursuing. The truth about Nathan's death had been buried under years of lies, yet Ethan's relentless pursuit ensured that those responsible were held accountable. In life, we often face moments where we must choose between comfort and courage. The easy path is to look away, to pretend things are fine. But the courageous path, the one worth taking, is to confront reality, no matter how difficult, and to fight for what is right. For those in their later years, Ethan's story serves as a call to action. Don't let time convince you that your story is over. Whether it's repairing broken bonds, uncovering long-buried truths, or simply choosing to embrace the present with open arms, life still holds new beginnings. Because as Ethan learned, sometimes the greatest chapters come when we least expect them.